in-house recruiter with Major Lindsay in Africa, a partner in our Chicago office, and I'm pleased to be here today with a friend of mine, Scott Levin. Scott is the Chief Administrative Officer and the General Counsel at FTD, and I've known Scott for about 8 years now, maybe a little bit longer. We were fortunate enough to place Scott in the position. I know when it was because, as Scott knows, it was right around the birth of my first child. I had to take a couple weeks off for paternity leave, so I know exactly how long ago it was. And Scott's had quite a successful and interesting ride at FTD, which I'm sure I'll talk about. But we're going to spend a little bit of time talking to Scott about what he's been through, what he sees in the future, and just have a conversation about the legal industry as a whole. So, Scott, welcome.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me. It's great to see you via video. Hopefully, we'll do this in person sometime soon.
Absolutely. I would say it's been long overdue to have a nice lunch together, hopefully this summer sometime. So let's just start from the beginning. Just, quickly, I suppose, where are you from and what was the journey to get to where you're at today? I'm sure that answer could be 5 hours long or 2 minutes long, but tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's been a long journey, but I'll give you the sort of abridged version. I grew up in South Philadelphia, right in the hood. I lost my dad when I was young, and I'm the first one in my family to go to college and, of course, to law school. So, the world that I live in today, I didn't even know it existed when I was younger. I took out a lot of student loans to pay for college and for law school. And I took a job in New York really because it paid the most at the time. I didn't know much about the different legal practices, and I knew I had a lot of loans to repay. And I really never looked back at that point. I got involved with a small firm that did like asset-based lending. I learned about financing, went to a bigger firm and learned how to represent borrowers. And I started doing M&A transactions, started working on sort of as outside GC for portfolio companies. An opportunity came up probably when I was like in my 9th year for my first GC role. I turned down a partnership at the firm, turned down a lot of money. I took a GC role, ironically enough, with FTD. I was with FTD twice. And I never really looked back. I mean, the money didn't become an issue, and I've just loved every day of what I've done as GC all these years. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly, having known you for a while, you're a very enthusiastic, passionate person. I don't think I've ever seen you on a bad day. I'm sure you've had bad days, but I never, for me, I don't know when I talk to you.
Yeah, I don't think I've had a bad day at work. I really genuinely enjoy what I do, and I have fun every day. At least I try to.
Well, Scott, I mean, you've worked with a lot of people over time. One of the questions I might have for you is, what's some of the best career advice you've gotten over the years? Anybody, could be beginning of your career, could be midstream, could be yesterday. What have you heard?
All right, well, one thing that kind of comes to mind, and it really was right before I took a GC position. It was at my old law firm. I was a senior associate, and I'm working on a huge transaction. And the partner that I was working with really taught me a very valuable lesson. Not everything always goes as planned, right? Huge transaction. We closed the deal. I don't know, a $400 or $500 million transaction at the time. And we found out that something got messed up, didn't get filed right in Delaware. It was a paralegal, messed something up. As the senior associate, I took responsibility for it. I walked into the partner's office expecting the worst. Everyone thought the transaction closed, but technically it really didn't. And I didn't know what to expect. And he looked at me after I explained the problem, and he said, I hope I can say this, shit happens, let's fix it. And I got to tell you, that was like the most refreshing response I could have gotten. And we immediately zeroed in for the next 24 hours, got very creative and figured out how to fix everything, which we did. And it just really taught me a lesson early on that, you're always going to have bumps and moguls and craters to deal with. And you just got to be creative, and you got to be persistent, and you have to sort of, if you get knocked down, you got to stand back up and just fix things. So that stuck with me.
Yeah, this is about you, but I had a similar version of that, which was I was a litigator, and we went into a case and we got completely killed by the judge. It was a disaster, and we just completely got what handed to us. And I came back to the senior partner. We gave him the story, and he heard the the litany of woe from my colleague and me, and he just looked at us and he said, "Well, at least we got the silver medal." And it was like a good sort of like, okay, not good, but you move on to the next thing at the end of the day. What, I mean, Scott, you've done, oh, go ahead, please.
No, go ahead. Let's go on to the next one. Yeah, that's fine.
I was going to say, I mean, Scott, I know you've done a lot at FTD, and I know you did a lot before you joined FTD in your career, but when you think about accomplishments, what do you look back at? What are you proud of? What are the things you're going to be talking about in retirement, which I know for you is many, many years away from now, but what are you proudest of?
Well, I'm really quite proud about a lot of the things I've done throughout my career for the companies that I've worked for. But the thing that I think stands out most is the most recent experience I had taking FTD through its restructuring. As you know, FTD, which was a public company, ran into some issues with its banks and went through a restructuring mid 2018 through until mid 2019. And I was asked to wear a very broad GC hat and lead FTD through the restructuring. And that really stretched me. I'm really super proud of the outcome. I had to focus on, maximizing the return for all the key stakeholders, preserving the FTD brand. FTD is really a technology company. Everybody thinks of it as the world's largest flower company, but it's really a technology company. So it was really important to keep as many people and the long-term employees focused and not jumping ship. I was put in a position where I had to address the worldwide employee population frequently. So I learned how to listen better, how to be more empathetic, and quite proud of the outcome. Which today I'm still with FTD. I work for the legacy floral business back to its roots from 1910, and the company's doing great, and it's still a lot of fun, and we have sort of a great owner. So for me, at my as long as I had worked, it was really, really nice to be stretched and learn even more and have that opportunity to take FTD through the restructuring process. Okay.
And this is probably a question maybe I've asked you once or twice, but I'm actually curious. What drives you? I mean, you work really hard. You're probably one of the hardest working people I know in this business. And you and I had a dialogue recently where I think you almost got mad at me when I told you, oh, you're towards the end of your career, and you're like, I got 20 more years to go. I mean, you are a hardworking person to a fault. I'm just curious, what's the drive for you?
Well, I love helping people fix things, and that's what I get to do all day. Line at the door, well, figuratively now, people aren't actually at the door. But I love it, no matter what the issue is. If it's something I haven't confronted before, if it's something I've done, 100 times, I just love sitting down and helping people resolve issues. I love to be, focused on a good business resolution, not necessarily a legal resolution. So I like to wear a very broad hat. And, I worked my way all the way through when I was a kid. Like I said, I grew up without a father. I always had jobs. I mean, I've had every job you could imagine. And I've just been a hard worker my whole life. So I don't think that's ever going to change. I can't imagine retiring. Worked my way through college and law school, as I mentioned earlier. And I happen to love what I do, too. So that makes it quite easy.
How have you? I mean, you've been a general counsel for quite a while now. How do you think you've sort of developed to reach that position? I'm sure you have, classmates from law school and colleagues, at the firm who have had nice careers, but maybe didn't get to this level. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you're a very humble guy, but like, what are the things you maybe thought about along the way to kind of get you get to this type of role?
I think early on, in the vein of really wanting to help people, solve issues, I try to provide a really high level of customer service, no matter who I'm involved with. And some of that, was cemented when I was general counsel at Morton's Restaurant Group, where, the whole company's about providing great customer service. At FTD, where, we're providing flowers for folks or gifts for folks from birth through every event, in someone's life. It's about great customer service. And for me, I just take that to heart. Whoever I deal with, they're all my customers. I want to provide great customer service. And I think a second thing, and what I've learned is, like, no matter how much experience you have, you can continue to learn and adapt, and that's really helped me develop too. Just going through that whole FTD restructuring experience, where I had to get in front of 1,000 employees, I really had to learn how to listen better, to be a little bit more empathetic, and just really get a lot more personal. It wasn't about just solving a legal issue. So for me, great customer experience, and having an open mind to continuing to learn and to adapt to new situations. So
Yeah.
I think that's probably helped me. Yeah.
I mean, if you don't mind, let's talk about FTD a little bit. I mean, you're unique in that, you had a stint at FTD, many, many moons ago, and then you came back at the end of the day. And I know that a lot had changed in that interim, but there must be something. You've now been there for, again, nearly 8 years or almost 8 years or whatever it is. There must be something about this company and what it does that's a big part of your life. It might be the job that you've run at the longest, or at least one that you've nearest to your heart. Tell us about, I guess, the company, I suppose, and why you've spent so many years there.
Yeah, it's always great to work for a company where you can really identify with the product. And like I said, FTD provides flowers and other gifts to consumers for all kinds of occasions. And it's really cool when, the company can track with someone, again, like through every significant life event. So I love the fact that it's really easy to identify with the product. But what makes the company really cool is, people think of FTD as the world's largest flower company. It's really a technology company. And it was when I first started with FTD, which goes way back to 1996. I was there for 3 years. I left for 14 and then came back. FTD was the first company in 1994, before I even got there, that had FTD.com. It had an internet business where consumers can go on and buy products, via the internet. So FTD's always been on the cutting edge of technology, and we're working now to kind of get back there. We're in the middle of a re-platform to have a best-in-class technology, both for the consumer side and also for our B2B side, where we offer products and services for our 9,000 florist members. So I've always loved the company. It has the deep, rich heritage of being around from 1910. And it also has one of the world's, most recognized logos with the Mercury Man emblem worldwide. There's, I think, right now 30,000 florists in 125 countries that are all affiliated. So it's just a fun company.
Yeah, no, and I to your point, I told people I've had a lot of life's most important events over the last 8 years or so, mostly good, a couple not so good. I lost my father, my wife lost her mom. But I do feel like I do go on FTD a lot. I do get the flowers, and you guys could probably track all those events. And I also, to your point about the flowers, I always end up getting, sometimes I get the bear, and sometimes I get some candies with it as well. I always have a few accoutrements, depending on obviously the event, if it's a positive one, or obviously one if it's not. So yeah, by the way, the website is great to be able to use. Super helpful for me. I'm not trying to make a plug for FTD, but I do use it. I do use it.
And Mike, from a professional perspective too, the company is sophisticated enough where we every kind of issue, tax, class actions, no matter what it is, FTD gets every kind of issue, so that makes it really challenging. I mean, on any given day, there's 20 different things, which really makes the job fun too.
Well, that's actually a great segue. So I wanted to talk about you, but now, so tell us maybe about what you do, the team. I know you've got one attorney, I think, working for you now, but I know you've had different kind of iterations over the last 5 to 7 years. Maybe give us that sense of what things you're seeing and how you handle them.
Sure. At its peak, we had a team of 7 folks. That was prior to the restructuring. The company is a little bit smaller now, and we're working with you to build the team again. We have a great senior corporate counsel, and as the company continues to grow, we'll expand the team. And if the company were to go public, we'd expand it, that type of thing. So the team's a little bit smaller now, and we have a broad mandate. We manage all the company's legal affairs. We probably still do around 1,000 contracts a year, compliance, privacy, management of litigation, M&A, protection of IP. We have sort of a global trademark portfolio, corporate governance, which we're now kind of putting back in place as you kind of look at public markets. You want to make sure that you're prepared for just about anything. So it's been it's been a lot of fun, kind of starting to kind of build the team again. And as we look ahead, we're trying to stay on top of all the things you read about that public companies have to deal with, whether it's diversity and inclusion, whether it's ESG, whether it's more scrutiny around governance. I don't want to be reactive to things. I'm trying to, as a GC, it's important to stay ahead of things and try to get management and owner buy-in so that you can invest in those things and be a step ahead. So that's sort of the background there.
Are there certain issues that you are kind of, what's the best way to ask this? Sort of certain things you like to deal with personally, either because you're passionate about it or because you think it's so important, and maybe other things that you feel comfortable maybe outsourcing to somebody else in your team or an outside law firm? Like, just give us maybe that sense of what you're doing versus maybe what other people might be at the level on.
Yeah, the thing that I liked the most when FTD was a public company, I liked sort of dealing with all the corporate governance, exec comp issues, all the fun stuff, not so much the contracts. But right now we're a really lean team, so I have my hands in everything. From an NDA to sort of an M&A transaction, it sort of both ends. And when you're a team of two, you have to be able to roll up your sleeves, jump in the trench, and tackle everything. So for me, when we were a public company, I really loved the public company aspects. I hope to get back to that someday soon. But I enjoy it all. I mean, everything is a challenge at times. I love all the different business partners that I get to work with at the company, which really makes it fun. We have sort of a brand new management team. Everyone's a little bit younger, and it makes it really kind of cool to interact with everybody. And everybody has different levels of experience and different things. So I love that. I love being able to draw on my experience to help folks who are new to the C-suite.
So in terms of challenges, when you think about what's coming ahead, I mean, let's maybe let's just start with COVID, because I know in conversations with you, like anybody, COVID's had its share of significant, huge challenges. But I also know that in some ways it's had a positive effect on the business because people are sending flowers instead of being able to see each other. So maybe describe just the all the different ways in which, well, not all, but a lot of the ways in which COVID has actually affected the business.
Yeah, well, as a sort of e-commerce business, we definitely got a boost during COVID, especially when folks could not celebrate those family events in person. They relied on sending flowers, which, again, is one of the reasons why the company is so great, that it offers that type of opportunity for folks to connect with their loved ones. As things are loosening up now, we have Mother's Day coming up, things are going to be a little bit different. Things aren't as tight as they were from consumers being able to being stuck at home. On the supply chain side, there was a big impact during COVID. Fortunately, our florists are very resilient, and we have 9,000 of them. So we really didn't miss a beat, although it was difficult at times last year. This year, I think everybody's back. So that's awesome. Big impact on our employees. We turned on a dime a year ago, March, and got everyone out of the office, as a lot of people did, including hundreds of customer service agents who had to be trained and equipped. And that's worked pretty well for the past year. And I have to say, at this point, it'd be difficult to think of, even when everything's back to normal, if that ever happens, that work would go back to normal and everyone would go to the office 5 days a week, all day, every day. I think the people have proven to be productive at home. And I think the value of the new work-life balance is really, everyone loves that. So as long as we could figure out how to keep people productive, I think we'll have some sort of hybrid model going forward from an employee and management perspective. And we'll have to wait and see what the new normal is like as far as consumer behavior. I don't think anyone knows.
Yeah, I think that's right. I don't think, in fact, I'm almost positive there will be no going back to what it was before, but the new might look somewhat like it for some places. And interesting and better, hopefully in some ways too. Maybe we'll take some of the real positive things, being able to get together with people and seeing people and going to lunch and talking about it, but with also the positive of being able to give a lot more flexibility to people as well to be able to handle life situations. So I was going to ask you what you thought the future may look like when things are back to normal, but you already, answered that one. But right now, are people in the office, just sort of a smattering of people?
No, we're still, other than our facilities, guys, we're still 100% remote. And, even when you look at customer service, we have opens up some opportunities where you can hire people from all over the country. You're not constrained to a market. We have some international partners who help us as well, and they've had to figure out how to operate remotely. I had to drive to the office yesterday just for the first time in a year, just to kind of do a walkthrough and figure out, how could we reconfigure the office to make it more suitable for a hybrid work environment. And I guess my big takeaway was I don't miss the 2-hour round trip drive at all. I got back and I'm like, God, I just lost 2 hours. I'm not going to get back. I'm so far behind. Let me get back on my computer and, and catch up. So it was nice to get out of the house, but I realized the time that we save commuting and, if you can use it productively toward work or for other, great things that help you have that life work balance, it's a wonderful gift that we've all been given.
Yeah, it's I like going to the office just because I go occasionally, but I have to admit that as busy as things are recently, sometimes even I admit to myself, I'm like, wow, this hour and a half of driving and walking around could be, better spent. Having said that, I do like getting out of the house too. So that's all these little positives and negatives of, it must have been interesting to go to the office, but at the same time, you probably wasted a lot of time in your mind.
One of the downsides, I get moved from room to room at home. I have my 2 daughters are still home and they're doing remote learning, and my wife does her radio show. She has a morning radio show. She does it from what used to be my office. So right now she's out to lunch, so I'm able to sort of get the office back. But on any given for any given call, you'll find me in a different room in the house. So now I never know where I'm going to be, where I'm going to get pushed.
Exactly. So let's put aside COVID for a second. Other maybe challenges that you see facing, the company in the, couple of years ahead, things that, you're talking about internally that people are on the lookout for?
I think, when a company comes through the process that FTD went through, the new company, and it is a brand new company, bought sort of a piece of the old company. The old company was split into 5 different pieces. We are in the process of really reinventing the company, reinvesting in the company, redefining the culture of the company, and that's all great opportunity. But we also have to sort of put back in place some of the fundamentals of being a great company. We have to be able to stay ahead of new initiatives and regulations that I mentioned earlier, whether it's diversity and inclusion or ESG, sustainability. So, there's this balance between, investing in the company to continue to grow and also investing in the things that great companies need to invest in that, sometimes might be a luxury for some companies if they can't afford to do that. So we're trying to balance all that and just rebuild the company again. We're off to a fantastic start. The company's doing great. And like I said, it's a lot of excitement to be with FTD right now.
Yeah, no, it certainly sounds like that. We're now 13 months into this pandemic. What are you fed up with? What are you? We've talked about maybe going to the office. That was such a great thing, but is it the room to room moves? Is that the biggest thing? You're being shifted around?
Tell you, I think what really gets me, and today happens to be trash day, but it seems like every day is trash day. Every time I kind of have to pull the cans down to the bottom of the driveway, I'm like, didn't I just do this yesterday? And it was really like a week ago, and everything kind of blends together. So there's this blending of the days, and the weekends aren't sort of different than the days. We haven't really been going out a lot. So I think what's sort of really gotten me is like the blending and meshing of day into day, and I'm looking for some kind of compartmental, some being able to separate sort of the beginning of the day, the end of the day, the evening, and the weekend a little bit.
I think probably a lot of people, it's a little bit, there was a time when people couldn't even tell what day of the week it was. And I always thought that was a little bit silly, but I agree with you. For me, it's also being home. I love being home and getting to see my kids, but also then all of a sudden it's like, oh, can you do this for like 30 minutes? Can you watch them while I do this? Which, of course, I don't want to be a heel and say no, but also sometimes I'm in the middle of a lot of calls and meetings and it's not that easy. So I think we're all dealing with certain things like that, but trash day is a good one. When when the lockdowns, I guess, I don't know, when things are a little more opened up, are there certain things from a professional perspective you want to start doing, either related to FTD or other things? Is it seeing some of your work acquaintances again? Is it something within the company? You already talked about kind of refurbishing the offices a little bit.
Yeah. I think what we're missing the most is, as I mentioned, we have sort of a new exec team, and we really only know each other for the last year virtually. And we've done a great job of trying to connect the best we can. So what I'm really looking forward to is getting together with all those people. Working together in person is so much different than doing it via Zoom or Teams and that type of thing. And for me, that's what we're missing the most, is that sort of that interaction, getting to really know each other in a way you wouldn't otherwise get to know them. And sort of the creativity and spontaneity that comes from, in resolving business issues when you're in the same room and you can deal with something real time. So I'm looking, forward to spending some time together with that team, and then all of our other business partners. I miss people. There's no other way to say it. So.
No, that's a totally fair way of putting it. And we can edit out this question if you don't have an example, but are there maybe an example of a situation that you think might have been resolved either differently or the process would have gone differently if you feel like you'd all been in the same room or you'd been able to just walk on over versus something else you had to do? It could be a big issue, it could be a small issue, but any example?
I think there are a lot of things where, when you're dealing with things via email or even texting or Teams messaging and chat, you read into things, or things need a little bit more explanation. So, boy, there's so many examples of things where just a quick conversation or a quick pop your head into somebody's office and get a clarifying question would send you off on the right track instead of the wrong track. I mean, too numerous to even sort of, kind of walk through any one example, but it's really, really that much more important to be super clear. And, and actually, I pick up the phone a lot more than other people do. And I'd rather do like the face-to-face and not just text, because, it's just a lot easier to kind of work through an issue more quickly if you have that personal interaction. And I there's so many examples, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, it's for me, it's like if I had somebody in the office, I wouldn't think twice about just dialing their extension and asking them a question. But then if I'm calling them, I'm always not sure of the protocol. Should I be texting them to say, hey, do you have 5 minutes today? And then calling them, but then I don't want to put anything else on my calendar or their calendar, or should I just call them? But is that too intrusive? If it's before 8:30, is it too intrusive? If it's after 6? And so there's a lot of those protocols I don't know. And sometimes I just think, it's not worth it. But in the office, it always would be worth it. It would be very easy to just dial the phone, listen to the ring.
It's definitely a little harder. Yeah, because again, you don't want to intrude on someone's space, but in the office, it's super easy. You just look across the hall and go pop in. It's like.
Scott, is there something about you that people would be surprised to find out? Something professionally that you think people don't know about you? If it's not professional, if you want to go personal, that's fine too.
Yeah, I guess there's a couple things. One is people will probably be surprised to learn that I'm a Deadhead. I've gone to so many Grateful Dead concerts and listened.
I am surprised at that. I am very surprised at that.
I used to have long hair, and at one point I even had a beard and mustache for a short period of time. So yeah, you'd be surprised if you saw some old pictures. And I guess the other thing is people are always surprised, probably because I'm a lawyer, that they find out that I actually have a really good sense of humor. And you know me a little bit. I made you laugh a few times.
Right. Well, in all seriousness, I mean, I wasn't just saying that because we're friends. I don't know that I've ever seen you on like a bad day. I'm sure you've had bad days, but you hide it. I've always seen you very positive, and you don't lose your temper. You're very even keel. To me, at least, I don't know. I don't know if you developed that over time, or if I'd known you in college, would you have the same way?
Yeah, I've always been very optimistic and very even keeled. Those were two good words to use, and I think a lot of people would describe me that way. I just, I just kind of, handle. I've seen a lot and I've done a lot, so I can handle grenades exploding all around me without kind of wincing too much. And I just kind of want to get to the solution. So I try to stay focused.
Yeah,
This
and
is
you and
today.
I, we've worked on a number of searches together. I mean, you've been kind enough to, hire us for a few of your searches, and that, they've gone really well. But a couple of times, somebody either declined or withdrew. I've never seen you get upset at the candidate, get upset at us, get upset, and you're very kind of, I don't want to say unemotional because I think that's like a negative, but you're just very strategic about it, business oriented. You might make a flip comment and then kind of move on to the next situation.
It's about channeling energy in a very positive direction, right? So, you have limited time, you have limited energy. It's important to just use it in a productive way. So, no, that's really who I am. I mean, I don't kind of go backward too often. So,
No, yeah, yeah. Well, if you if you weren't a general counsel, what else would you have been? And I was about to say a deadhead, apparently. But no. But yeah, if you hadn't done this, I mean, something else you would have done in your legal career, or if you weren't a lawyer, is there something else that you've always kind of thought about pursuing?
well, we could work backward. I know I wouldn't be a doctor because I faint when I see blood. So that wouldn't work out. I know I couldn't be an entertainer because I'm tone deaf and I can't pick up an instrument for anything. So working backward, I'm really curious about the way things are built and the way things work. So maybe an engineer or an architect or something. I think about once in a while. If I had to be a different type of lawyer, trust in estates seems like a lot of fun. Helping people, with lots of money plan things. And part of me likes tax law too, but I don't want to admit that. I don't want to admit that publicly. Yeah.
I know, I know. This is again about you, but I nobody's gonna interview me anytime. I'll say if I had a dream world, what I love is one of those things where you could learn about a profession for like 3 weeks and ask all the questions you want, and then go to another one. So I'd love to be on like a cruise ship back in the day. How does a cruise ship work? How does it make money? What's the culture of it? And then go to a doctor's office. How do people deal with patients? I wish I wish there was money in being able to do something like that. I'm not sure there is, but
Sounds like we want to be 8-year-olds again. Just
yeah,
ask a lot of questions.
yeah, exactly. Well, my son is 8 right now, and he asks a lot of questions.
Oh.
What just a couple last questions, Scott. I really appreciate your time today. Um, there's going to be junior attorneys listening to this, people who are at law firms or law students or just beginning their in-house career. What is there any advice you have on their career or any advice on the meaning of life you want to pass on to them? What are things you tell people?
I'd say you always have to try to stay positive and you always have to work super hard. Even if you don't love what you're doing at the time, make sure you're really, really good at it. All right. So if you're really good at what you do and you really work hard, it'll open up all kinds of opportunities for you. So if you get negative and you don't like your job and your performance falls off, it's just going to send you in a different direction. So stay positive, work hard, and really get good at whatever you happen to be doing at the time, even if you don't love it.
Yeah, no, that's good advice for anybody. And I suppose, are there certain, again, last question or two, are there certain things that you've seen that lawyers do, at a more, lawyers that are more junior to you that you think are particularly successful, or things bad, maybe some bad habits that people have fallen into, at a more junior level that you think, they should think about kind of changing up?
Yeah, if you're interested in making the move from a law firm to sort of an in-house practice, a lot of times I'll go to an outside lawyer and the answer or management will, and the answer is no. You have to be a little bit more. You have to really know the business, and you have to be able to weigh kind of the benefit to the business versus the risk. And you won't get that a lot from the outside lawyers because they don't know the business as well. So if you're thinking about going in-house, the more you know about business, the more you know about financial statements, the more value you can add, and the more you can help your business partner make a decision that's good for the business while understanding the risk. Obviously, there's certain lines you can't cross. You can't do things that are illegal and stuff like that. But I think I learned a lesson, a long time ago. It was actually at at FTD when I was first at FTD in the 90s, and it was owned by a private equity player who was sort of a big guy at the time, very successful hedge fund manager. And this was my first sort of interaction with him when I went from the law firm to FTD, and he asked me a question, and he's like, "Can we do this?" And I said, "No." And he grabs me and he says, "Scotty, the answer is never no." And sometimes it is, like I said, but it was a real lesson that you got to think creatively. You got to understand the business more so than anything, and you got to make a business decision, not a legal decision.
Yeah, that's great advice. That's great advice. Well, Scott, this has been really helpful. We really appreciate the time today. Thanks for spending. I always enjoy spending 30, 40 minutes. I learned you were a deadhead at one point, which is great as well. So that's something I can take with me, but I always want to give you back a little bit of time. Thanks again. And we appreciate the time spending with myself and our audience.